Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, Journey into Design and Research. My name is Chanel Power. I'm going to be your host for today. I'm also the founder and executive director of Mentor Me Collective. We're so excited to have you here joining us on today with the amazing Lauren Tillar. Today, we're going to get started with Figma 101. And yes, Lauren is an amazing and incredible UI and UX designer. So, if you are an early career professional, if you are transitioning into tech, if you're looking to learn a little bit more about design and obviously the design tools, this session is here for you. But before we dive in today, I just want to make a few announcements. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn. So if you're tuning in live on LinkedIn, make sure you are clicking the follow button and make sure you thumbs up this video as well. Go ahead and give it a nice, healthy thumbs up. Comment in the chat and let us know where you are tuning in from. You can put that in the comment section. If you are tuning in live on YouTube, welcome, family. Please make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel as well. It does help support our community. We are a nonprofit organization, so every like, every heart, every subscribe, it helps. So, without further ado, we do want to make sure that you all do not forget to connect with us in our Slack. You'll notice that there's a comment here in the YouTube section. I'll put it on LinkedIn as well, but you can go ahead and click on this link to join our wonderful community on Slack, where we are more than happy to continue to connect with you, help you with resources, and also there are some exclusive job opportunities that are shared within our Slack channel as well. Okay, just a little bit about Mentor Me Collective for those of you who are new. But if you're not new, welcome back to the family. But if you are new, we say welcome to the family. And we just want you to learn a little bit more about us. So we are a community-driven organization. We're committed to supporting, the next generation of technologists, especially first-gen professionals. So whether you are an early career techie, like I said, those who are definitely completely transitioning from maybe a different industry into tech, we want to welcome you with open arms. It's through events like these that we aim to provide resources and mentorship and real world insights to guide your career journey. So we again want to welcome you to our family. Feel free to continue to stay plugged in. We have events like these that happen every month, and we also have virtual events as well, or in-person events that happen in New York City if you are in the New York City area. So, with that being said, I am excited to introduce today's speaker. Lauren Tillar is a senior UI and UX designer who's been working with Figma to create stunning user-centric designs. Today, she's going to take us through the fundamentals of Figma and how you can use it to bring your designs to life. So whether you are new to Figma or just want to sharpen your skills, you are in the right place. So without further ado, welcome to the stage, Lauren.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
We're super excited to have you too. Again, we just want to say thank you so much for being a part of our community and being open to sharing your wonderful resources and also your insights as well. Awesome.
Awesome. I'll
All right.
go ahead and start on my presentation.
Sounds good.
Yeah, introducing Figma is one of the many, I would say Figma is definitely one of the many tools that I've used in my design journey. And I say journey because there are so many different paths that got me to Figma and using it in my career as a UI UX designer. Here is the overall agenda for today. We're going to be starting off with what is Figma, key features and tools, being the Figma professional, and let's collaborate in Figma, best practices and real world projects. So I would definitely want to say I did not come from a UI UX background. I came from a design background, and my experience spans digital, print, and environmental platforms. And within my journey, I would say that it took me a few different turns to actually get to UI UX. And you can see some of the you can see these are some of the projects that I've done in my past and some of the projects that I still do. But I definitely have a really interesting background in terms of how I made my way to a UX/UI senior UX/UI designer. And you can, if you want to, go ahead and check me out on my website or in the creative. Um, but this is a little bit about who I am as a designer. And I started out as an in-house designer, as a graphic designer. I did not have like UI UX experience in that aspect of working predominantly in web. I worked predominantly as a print designer. Sometimes I would work online, but not too much. And then I held several freelance opportunities and internships throughout my lifetime that allowed me to have new experiences. And I do want to highlight it's allowing yourself to do kind of like these freelance opportunities, also internship opportunities that can help you to experience these new platforms as a designer. And I highly suggest that. And also, there was a time that got me as really got me what really got me into a UI UX designer was exhibition and environmental graphic design. So I started off trying to really become an environmental graphic designer. That was like my goal. But then I started understanding and I started seeing like these digital experiences. And I was like curious. I was like, how can you kind of merge digital experiences within the built environment? This was probably around 2016. And I started hearing the word user centered, human centered design and user centered design and product design. So during COVID, I made a pivot. And it was during that pivot that I was introduced to Figma and introduced to UI UX design. And I worked during that pivot. I worked as a contractor. I worked within a design agency, a few design agencies, as well as an in-house designer. And I also volunteer. Overall, my goal is to continue to develop myself and to continue to challenge myself as a designer. And I think Figma is one of the best places to do that. So, Figma for design. This image, you can pretty much see the general interface for Figma. I definitely have to say that I've seen Figma and I've actually used Figma for a range of design backgrounds. It's more than just creating desktop and mobile experiences or web experiences. However, that is the predominantly reason why most people use Figma. I use it to collaborate. I use it to brainstorm. You can also use it to do visual design as well, even print design. Of course, that's not like the ideal place, but the one cool thing about Figma that I really like is that it is free. You do have to have paid versions of it, of course, to access more of the features. But because it's free, I feel like it helps democratize um, design and allows people to allow like new professionals or a lower barrier of entry so that most everyone can at least experience the free version and get some really cool get your hands on a really cool design tool. Yeah. So some of the key features in Figma that I definitely want to just note is the frame tool. The frame tool basically offers the ability to view and work from the most recent desktop and mobile layouts and tablet dimensions. It's really cool. So you don't have to like look up what your mobile dimensions are. You don't have to look up what a desktop dimension is. You have several options to choose from. Of course, it's always important to do your own research and to know what is the standard mobile view, what is the standard desktop view. But the frame tool allows it to already have that built-in dimension. Another of my favorite tools, the key tool that I would say I use the most and that was really extremely helpful is auto layout, which allows for like a very cohesive layout when it comes to like spacing and creating responsive design. And then another tool that I really think is great, or another feature that I really think is great about Figma is um, the real time collaboration. You can comment and reply, and then plugins are really cool for you to like help for like aspects of accessibility, color palettes, and dev tools. necessary skills for using Figma in a professional environment. I definitely say there's a lot of different skills that you would definitely need to use Figma in a professional environment. But I have to say the number one skill that I would say everyone has and that is needed is the desire to learn, right? Because without that skill and desire, then you can really get nowhere within Figma because it can be kind of like a daunting interface at first, especially if you're not used to like Adobe Creative Cloud or other design interfaces. However, but if you have the desire to just tackle it, it's definitely one of the first skill sets that you need to knowing how to use Figma in a professional environment. And then from there, I would go to design fundamentals, and this includes kind of like the principles and elements of design, understanding things such as color theory, hierarchy, typography, layout, and again like that visual hierarchy. Those are all really helpful for when you're designing in Figma. Another skill is UI UX design, the knowledge of user interface and the knowledge of user experience design principles, including like wireframing, prototyping, and usability testing. Like those are all professional skills that you would use and within Figma, and that would be helpful. And just a little bit about UI UX design if you're not familiar with that or you know about it but you would like to learn more. I definitely suggest there's so many amazing um, ways to gain knowledge in that area. Even within Figma, there's they have tools to help you learn a little bit about that, but also of course, something free that you can do that is completely free of course to learn is YouTube, and that's super helpful, as well as and utilizing your professional network. And then there's definitely several boot camps that you can use to learn more about that. And then I would like to go into the Figma proficiency, is being familiarity with Figma's tools and features, including like components, constraints, prototyping, and collaboration features. That's kind of like I talked about before. And then responsive design skills and designing for like various screen sizes and devices, which are all built into the platform, as well as having like a consistent user experience and the best user experience design. So I definitely want to make sure right now that we highlight the difference between UX and UI. So UI is user interface design. It's more like the visual side. Think typography, color, branded elements, brand identity, UI, hierarchy. Whereas UX is more of user experience, and that also includes like the research methodologies. Really trying to implement that ideation phase before you move into the visual design phase. So those are two helpful things to know, because that's a lot. Those two things are areas that you use Figma in often, especially within this field of UX UI. Another area is design systems. I definitely want to hark on this because design system like Figma is a really great platform for creating design systems and also maintaining them as well. And there's a lot of great features for developing efficient style guides to ensure consistency across projects. So when you go on, say, a branded website, like BMW's website, you see like certain consistencies. Like you probably notice all like the navigation is the same on every page. Like the buttons are the same visual style, and that happens within the design system. And that design system you can create and maintain in Figma as well. And some people are just design system designers. Like they will be a designer just focusing on that design system. And then also moving into problem solving. That's a huge skill for Figma, especially when it comes more to the user research, user experience side of it. It allows for really great opportunities to collaborate, to solve problems, to do prototyping for user testing, and also for having a platform to synthesize in a collaborative way, and the ability to like address those design challenges and to propose creative solutions all in real time. And communication skills is definitely a necessary skill that you need because it is such a collaborative tool. Also, adaptability, willingness to learn. Like I mentioned earlier, new features are always evolving, they're always coming out with new trends within Figma. One thing I do want to say is plug is they do have an annual conference that is really cool. The Within their brand, and I believe they do make that free if you look into their website. So that's another cool free resource. So I mentioned it a little bit before, but how can Figma support collaborative design? And I definitely want to say this is a really cool feature within Figma. And as you can see to the right, you see kind of like these D's, these Y's, what are those? Those are comments. So when a person is designing or when multiple people are designing on a website, you can go in and there's a really cool feature where you can simply write in your comment in real time so someone else can see it and then you can reply to that comment, and that is really a collaborative experience within Figma that is super helpful in advancing and getting feedback on a design. Also, there's a really cool feature where you can, as someone's like typing, you can like type right back, like at them and type right back to them, which is really cool. I didn't know you could do that, but one of my colleagues um, at my previous job told me about that. But yeah, there's so many cool little ways to communicate within the platform. Another thing too is version control. I do want to highlight this because I don't know if you've ever experienced this. You're working on something and you forget, like you accidentally delete it and you need to go back. They have a really cool feature that has the previous versions that you can access like days before or even weeks before, and um, and that is definitely something that is really helpful as well when it comes to collaborative design. So now I want to move into best practices for creating impactful design deliverables. One of the key things here is the ability to organize your files. The thing with Figma is you really get a lot, especially when you're designing for a really large website. Sometimes websites can be 100 pages, 30 pages, and when you're designing for that, it gets really overwhelming really fast. So this is how the interface looks like for the layers, that where you can name your files accordingly, and you can actually kind of within the frame, you can like nest certain folders, and they're called pages, but it is the same concept of like files and folders on your desktop. It all happens right here within Figma. And when you're one of the best practices is naming your files, having um, clear understanding of the layers and certain other areas within those pages, so you can maintain an easy navigation for yourself and also your colleagues. Also, one of the best practices is maintaining visual consistency by utilizing components and assets. And you can kind of see in this GIF how this person has their like design system created, and in the right area, you kind of have some of those elements where you can change those change those um, change those components and change the master components, and that is really helpful too. Um, you can also focus on maintaining visual consistency by having styles, like type styles, naming your type styles, as you can see to the right, your local styles, or it says local styles, and then you can do your color styles based upon your brand. So there's a lot of ways to maintain that visual consistency within Figma. There's also Figma libraries for icons and images that you use frequently. That is another really cool way to maintain that visual consistency across the design experience. And then designing for accessibility. This is definitely one of the best practices within Figma. I definitely want to know that, accessibility is very huge. You have WCAG plugin that you can actually use within Figma, and that's super helpful because it allows you to understand like what's working and what's not working from a design accessibility perspective. Also, always consider people who probably, are colorblind, probably are hard of hearing, and so many possibilities that you want to design for. And Figma has a really cool feature within their ability to have plugins, and you have access to some of these helpful accessibility plugins, and that's definitely best practices for creating impactful designs, because there's moments when, especially with larger brands, where if they're not maintaining certain standards, they can get sued, or it can become a liability, and sometimes certain companies will lose money because of that, which is an issue, most definitely. So I'm going to start with, before I go into my next section, which is Figma in the real world, I want to move actually into the tool itself. This is a really new experience, or when you first get into Figma, this is kind of like the first experience that you'll see, which is really cool. They kind of have these preset kind of frames right here, and it just goes into it starts teaching you the right within the app, which is really nice, the tool. So it's really cool to see that you be able to have access to understanding this. I mean, of course you can go to YouTube and learn there, but also there's, in addition to that, the tool has its own kind of like built-in understanding of how to use it and how to first access their libraries and other color styles. So basically, this is how Figma looks like. This is how it appears. You have, I would say, your design board right here in the middle. You have to the left your files, your pages, kind of like what the actual boards you're designing on. And then you can make more pages depending on what what you want to design, which is really cool. And then you have your toolbar on the bottom. I know Figma just updated their toolbar, so this is the new one. And then, like I said, you have your frame that you can add in, and of course you can customize that frame, or you can create, and you see to the right, once you click that tool, you see it has a list of all the different dimensions to the right. Also, not just what I mentioned, but also presentation, watch, paper, social media, Figma community, archive. So you can kind of see that they already have preset dimensions for social media, print, this is paper, and then the watch. You can use like shapes, and then the little caret exposes more, but you can kind of get the gist. And then I definitely want to say, this is the design mode, but there's also prototyping mode, interactive prototypes that are really cool. And this is all free. So if you're curious, I highly suggest make an account and start playing around in it. Awesome. Yeah, so that's the interface. And I would be amiss not to show that during my presentation, because after all, we are talking about Figma. Alrighty, so definitely want to move into this real world experience. So I have to say, one of my favorite things about just like using Figma as a UI UX designer is you have access to a lot of top tier businesses and their, and what they have available for their design system, which is really cool. So I'm just going to take you through this real world experience with IBM's design system called Carbon Design System. Of course, this is unofficial, so I don't know what the actual official one is, but if you can just Google it yourself, you have access to this as well. Several other companies, they just have available. So once you move into this, you can kind of see that this real world experience, they have kind of like, they'll start off here, like I mentioned, the file page, you have your cover, your elements, your grid, and then your overview. And this overview gives you what to expect for this design system and this actual file that you have the freedom to access. And it says components are one of the key building blocks of the design system. Their systematic reuse helps to create visual and functional consistency across products. And then it starts to talk about the actual components within this design system. So basically, a component are the building blocks to a larger design, like a desktop design or mobile design. So that you think of it, it's like little pieces making up the whole design. And one of the ways that you can save time as a designer is by making a single component and then copying and pasting that, and having copying pasting that within Figma, which is what you can do, and then have lots of different variations. And that's really helpful as well, because instead of designing each little button, you can use that one button, that symbol, and sorry, the word was leaving, that symbol, and then you use it across different examples, but different layouts, which is super helpful in making a consistent, cohesive design. Oh, let me see. Okay, here we go. It's like jumped ahead a little bit too much. So here you can kind of see like even more so that design system and kind of like the different types of components that are in here. So the cool thing is once you click into that design system, you have I didn't click into everyone, but I'll give you the example of what it looks like, of what a button looks like. But you can also see that you have different views of the accordion. Like, so if someone wants to stack information on top of each other, and then like breadcrumbs, you can see kind of like a little snippet here, their buttons, and then their check boxes, their code snippet. So it's a really organized way for companies to just really create within Figma and to have it accessible to their greater design team. So you have to think about, of course, some companies haven't designed design systems yet, but some companies are. But the biggest thing is you want to maintain for, especially for a brand. You're thinking these big brands, there's, they have deadlines. How can they get something out fast? Especially with websites that are always evolving, always changing. And one of the ways they do that is by using that design system that I shared with you about in Figma, which they have like access to, not just within like the top designers, but all the way down to like the junior level designers too. So if you're an entry level designer and you're new to it and you're kind of curious about like getting your hands dirty or kind of like exposing yourself to more prestigious like brands, definitely highly suggest looking into that, seeing, like what if there's a specific brand and you're kind of wondering how it looks like, how design looks like for them. I definitely suggest that you look into that. And then of course, like once you click into their buttons on their buttons page, so this is like each little square has its own page. And once you click on their button page, you can see that there is a lot of different variations. And, so when you have like your enable, your hover state, this is how it looks like, your active state when you click on the button, and then when you're focused on the button. So they have like how the button looks like with icons. Of course, it's a plus because it's a placeholder. And of course, like I should have mentioned this, but these are all placeholders and these are all editable. within Figma as well. And then you have your simple icon. But this is like a really basic design system, an example of a real world experience with IBM that is super accessible, super easy to look into if you want to start looking into how other real world experiences. And again, that is their carbon design system. That's the name of that. Um, so I just want to have a few closing remarks, but I definitely highly suggest, like, when it comes to design and when it comes to Figma, and especially as a UI UX designer, there are several things that you can do to advance your career, um, and to grow as a UX designer. I highly suggest, like, one these are some of the things that I highly suggest, like attending conferences and workshops such as these, even like the virtual ones, and the Tapia conference and CMDIT. That's another one too to look into. Of course, like take LinkedIn online training courses to help you learn more. And a lot of times those online courses you can, if you have a if you have a library, if you go to your library in your personal hometown, then you can get a library card, then you have access to LinkedIn Learning for free, which is really nice. And one of the things too is oh, Interaction Design Foundation is another cool program. Of course, Mentor Me Collective, highly suggest them to get involved with them to continue to grow as a UX UI designer as well. And then to take mentorship and apprenticeship programs. I think one of the ones that I've used in the past was ADP List. Um, Mentor Me Collective, they definitely have a really great mentorship program as well. And then engage in online communities. UX jobs is another one to engage in, and UX Collective is another one as well. And also follow top UX creators on LinkedIn and learn. They have like courses for free. These are some of the names that I followed in the past or that I'm currently following as well. And one of the things that I do myself that I want to suggest within Figma that is super helpful is actually looking at a really good design, like looking at really great design. If you're interested in layout or understanding how can you create something really amazing in Figma, I highly suggest like taking that actual layout and then putting it into Figma and then recreating it. You try recreating that exactly the same, just so that you can get kind of your skills better and more so for or user interface skills. That's super helpful. I super suggest you do that because sometimes a lot of people come in UX and they're really good with like user experience skills, but their visual design skills aren't the best. But if you continue to practice, and you have to practice and practice, then you definitely get better. It's not a lost cause at all. And then also some other places to kind of get your feet wet with, like volunteering. I think volunteering is especially if you're entry level and you're still trying to break into the field. I highly suggest like volunteering is a really great way to do that because it's less pressure and it's a great opportunity for you to to design and probably actually own more of the design in that way, and to develop your portfolio as well. And it also helps other designers. You can kind of network more so in that aspect with no pressure. And Rescue is a really, really cool place to go. I think they also have a Slack channel, which is nice. Benefit Design, Digital Boost, Skilled Up Life, Points of Light, Digital for Good. Those are all great places, and I'm pretty sure some of them are also on LinkedIn as well to get kind of like that volunteer experience and exposure to that. All right. I guess I will open up the floor for any questions.
Awesome, Lauren. This was amazing. So let's throw some fire emojis in the chat if the content definitely resonated. I do see some questions in the chat, so I'll just go ahead and bring some on up. Okay, from Luane. Besides going through the traditional degree, what certifications or pathways would you recommend?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I have a degree in graphic design. So it's not necessarily in like UX UI design, but I did get a certification in user experience design from General Assembly. I would say that was very helpful to me because I needed that um, kind of like that structured learning experience. However, that was pretty expensive. I think Google, their certification program, I feel like that's a reasonable cost. And it's pretty good. It's a pretty standard quality certification program. Also, of course, Sersha. So I think they do some free certifications as well. And then and just this is just a little plug. Sometimes if you just Google UX certifications and kind of like put your name in there, your email, they'll give you like and this is what someone told me when I was like kind of about to pivot. If you put your name in there, they'll kind of give you like and if you're like a self-paced person, like if you're like, oh, I don't need certifications, I can definitely do this on my own, they'll give you kind of like a little introduction pamphlet. And you can take that pamphlet and kind of just tailor your own course yourself, and that's something too if you're really good at being self-paced.
That is awesome advice. Christabel, when creating a prototype, do attributes like buttons have to be interactive and functional?
Yeah, definitely. I would say because it allows you to see. So in prototypes, you're doing user testing, and with user testing, what you're doing, you're trying to understand how a user is interacting with your product, with your desktop experience or your mobile experience. And if there's a anything that is interactive, like a button or like a drop down or a carrot that you would expect to be active on an actual website or a live website, highly suggest that to be interactive on a prototype. The only catch is sometimes when you have like when you don't have a lot of time and you can't prototype the whole design. Sometimes not everything has to be functional. It's just the sometimes when it comes to restraints, there's probably just like a path that you really want to see if users are taking or not taking, if they're actually clicking on it or not. But I highly suggest that you always give yourself enough time to make sure that the prototype is fully functionable, because then you want to see where people are actually clicking to help you get better insight.
That was great advice. Awesome. We're getting some love in the chat. So shout out to you, Jordan. We'd love to see it. Julie again saying thank you so much. We have a question about GA. Did you attend GA in person or online?
I definitely attended it online, especially because it was during COVID. So,
Oh,
yeah,
touche.
a really good question.
Another question from Zinzelli. Also, how are you able to make your portfolio unique after attending a boot camp where everyone is doing similar work? That's a really good question.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, I've done several iterations of my portfolio. I started with um WordPress, but I think the thing is always keep your eye out on portfolio platforms. Like I would just go on, well, first of all, is it affordable? That's the first thing. And then always make sure that like look at what is appealing, look at what stands out to you, and then kind of be like, oh, what platform did they design their portfolio on? I did UX portfolio um because it's because it's easy, but I also like the functionality and I also like how it reads. It allows, one of the things that I saw with portfolios is that the functionality isn't you kind of like try to zoom in and you really can't, and it doesn't allow for you to see those little details. um and then let's see, portfolio, yeah, when it comes to actual items in your portfolio, apart from the functionality, when it comes to actual items, sometimes you can create there's a word for it, but you can create web experiences or a website that is kind of like hypothetical, that you know that you have the ability to do, but you probably haven't had that experience yet. Like for instance, on my website, I have an e-commerce website. I have an e-commerce site that I created. I've never. It's like a fictional website. It doesn't even exist, but it shows you my ability and my skills from a visual design perspective, and then from a UX perspective. So if there's like um, a certain perspective or a certain design or a certain like project that you want to create just to showcase the depth of your skills that you did not get in a boot camp, you can set that up yourself.
Excellent and awesome advice. I hope that helps, Anjali. Awesome. Another question from Miss Watson. I have experience in Adobe, but not Figma. Is there any Adobe products that are similar in terms of the design experience?
Oh yeah, definitely. I actually, for one of the agencies I worked in, is XD. So Adobe XD is like the Adobe version of Figma. And again, you can prototype in there. The prototyping's not as robust as Figma, but you definitely can do that in there. And and because it's Adobe, it is somewhat similar to that in design, Illustrator, and Photoshop.
Oh, that's so cool. I just learned something new.
Yes, that's my friend, by the way. Thanks for joining.
Yes, we love that. And again, we're seeing more love in the chat. I have a couple of questions that I definitely, like as you were presenting, came up. So for
Mhm.
me or for you, how do you continue to stay creative and innovative, like when working within design constraints?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think, how do you stay creative and innovative? So my background is in art. So I one of the things that I have to do as a designer, because you're getting so many design prompts and you're getting so many people telling you what to do, it's helpful for me to have an outlet where I can control the narrative, where I can create my own art, visual designer, as like my visuals, like my drawing, my illustration, so I can kind of tap into that creative outlet for myself. And one of the ways that I approach my design is by having like Pinterest is super helpful. Like looking at all the different types of interfaces. Like say that I'm in a field, like my background, I'm in uh, pharma, healthcare. But say like I'm in healthcare and pharma, but I always felt like it's super constrained. So you might want to look into like a luxury brand, like fashion, like top fashion luxury brands, to approach that interface experience with for a pharmaceutical company or healthcare industry. So looking at more of the creative industries that are pushing the boundaries. I always feel like fashion, they're always pushing the boundaries on their website. Of course, like tech companies are helpful to remain like creative as well.
I love that. I have another question, and this is more so in regards to maybe working collaboratively, like in Figma. So, what tips do you have for folks that are working collaboratively, cross functionally in Figma, like within teams,
Yeah.
and also maybe like working across time zones as well?
Yeah, no, that is actually one of the things I've been working on too recently. I would say having access to the Figma file, making sure everyone has access. You can change access too. So if you're working cross-functionally and you're working in a with a team member who is not a designer, and they're coming in, say, from the account team or the editorial or copy team, you want to make sure that they don't have access to edit those designs, because that is not fun when you're designing as a visual designer and then another team member from a different department comes in and changes things. So you can change the access so that they can only view the design, and also they can comment. So if they see something they're not sure on, they can leave a comment. Get connected to their personal email, so they can also see when you reply back to them in that. So it links to your personal email account, which is really cool as well. So you can kind of have a conversation in two places. Um, And then I would like to, I don't think I talked about this, but FigJam. FigJam is a really cool way to be collaborative in Figma. And you can do brainstorm sessions there. It is kind of like Miro or Mural, where you can have lots of people come in and kind of like do like write with tabs, write with different shapes, and kind of like get ideas out there too. But it's Figma's version of that.
That is awesome. Super awesome. We have another question in the chat from Christabel. How is participating in design sprints like? I guess what is it like to be in a design sprint?
Yeah. So participating in a design sprint is really helpful because you get exposure to the whole design process, and you get the ability to really see what it's like. Because sometimes when you're working as an in-house designer or at a creative agency, you'll probably, especially when it's a larger team, you'll probably just be able to access like part of the design. Like, for instance, sometimes when you're working in a design sprint, um, normally it's like with smaller teams, because they probably don't have the larger team to really do all of the experiences. So you'll get to like access the full design, what is it called, design the design process from ideation all the way to handing it off to the developers, which is a really helpful experience. So I highly suggest that if you can.
That was a great point and awesome suggestion as well. For those of you who are still who are putting in the chat, you'd like to connect with Lauren, you totally can by going to this link here and connecting with her online. I'll also put up the QR code as well. That can also be quite helpful for those who are looking to continuously connect. I have another question. Oh, yes, Lauren.
Sorry.
No, that was cute. We love the aesthetic. That was actually my next question. So, like, how do you ensure Figma designs are both functional but also aesthetically pleasing?
Yeah. I think it starts within kind of like the low fidelity phase, when you're creating those wireframes, like those kind of like the skeleton. You think of like the hierarchy, what that looks like, and creating in grayscale is super helpful too. Um, and then and then that really helps with functionality, because in those low fidelity experiences, then you can do user testing and then move on to like mid-fives and add, like, continue to develop that. And then high fidelity, which is like making sure that the visual design is appropriate. So that is definitely a way that you can like add those two areas together.
Awesome. Well, everyone, if we don't have any more questions, I just want to say again, thank you so much to Lauren for coming to this amazing session, hosting it with us, sharing with us our wonderful view on how we can be better and do better in Figma. I have a question for you, actually, my last question. What is an underrated or maybe underused um, feature in Figma that you really feel like would be very helpful for folks that are growing in their skills and design?
Ooh, underused. I would say, and I would probably say getting into your library, like understanding how to like publish a library, looking into that. And that moves into like the type styles, the color styles. Um, Sometimes I think to share a library, you might have to have a paid version. Um, but and then also like um, let's see, plugins are really helpful as well, to kind of like, there's so many plugins. So I think doing your research on plugins is really helpful. I know there's also plugins that are incorporating AI, which is interesting too, to kind of like see how you can incorporate that into your design process as well, and to play with that. But the cool thing about plugins is that they're free. which is kind of cool as well. And you can also create your own if you're feeling up for it.
That is awesome. Thanks again for this amazing session. Again, everyone, you can go ahead and follow Lauren on her or connect with her on LinkedIn. She also is in our Slack channel. So for those of you who are interested in joining our Slack, you totally can by clicking on this link here. It will give you a direct invite to our Slack, and then from there we can continue the conversation in the community channel and or introductions channel. With that being said, again, thank you so much, Lauren, and I wish you a wonderful night.
Thank you. I did share my website too if anyone wants the link.
Right here again.
Oh, no, I put it in the chat.
Oh, my apologies. Let me go ahead and copy that as well. And I'll put that into the chat for you all to access. Thanks for letting me know, Lauren.
And I did my website on UX Folio too, so that's where I actually landed on. So
I love that. I love UX Folio too. Very underrated. Um, so we love that. Awesome. All right, everyone. Just wanted to give a couple of more announcements. Again, saying goodnight to Lauren for now. Good night. Some more announcements we have. So that you all know, make sure again that you are following Mentor Me Collective on LinkedIn, and make sure you're also subscribing to our YouTube channel. For those of you who are viewing on YouTube, just go ahead and give this video a thumbs up so that you can make sure that you are catching more sessions just like this. The party is just getting started. We have 2 more sessions happening this week in regards to design and user research. Tomorrow, we have a session with Malik Jones Robinson. He's going to be talking about his journey into product design. He is a senior product designer at Uber Freight. So if you all want to learn a little bit more about that and also what it has been like for him transitioning from a teacher, special education teacher, now into a designer, definitely stay tuned. And then on Thursday, we have the incredible Terrell Barron, founder of the Barron Review, who also was a co-founder with us for our first educational session, educational program, user design and research fellowship program. We'll talk more about that. But he is specifically going to be leaning into mastering the journey with Miro. So if you are interested in learning Miro, you've been seeing it around, you want to learn a little bit more about how you can get started, how you can leverage it within your design process, user research process, whatever the like, we definitely encourage you to come on by. And again, it will be on this same exact YouTube channel. We also are streaming on LinkedIn. It will always be every night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. Okay. Again, we do invite you to join our Slack community. The party is always going on over there. So if you want to continue to be connected with individuals, specifically also professionals in design, tech, and anywhere beyond, we encourage you to join us. So that's it for tonight. Thanks again, and we hope to see you at our next event. Bye, everyone.